What's up, everybody? I go by the name of Domo.
And I go by the name of Yoshiko.
We sit with entrepreneurs and artists across disciplines to share their stories, insight, and gems. Their journey will inspire you to think about community and your own narrative, how it shapes who you are, and what your legacy will be.
You're listening to No Blueprint.
No Blueprint.
To No Blueprint.
No Blueprint.
You are listening to No Blueprint.
I am Nikita Oliver.
Hey. So when you came in, you're probably like, yo, they just put my running for mayor sign up on the wall because I was here. I want you to know that it's been up since we moved in.
That's
Very
sweet.
You know.
I'm gonna be honest. I actually didn't see it.
That's okay.
I think because maybe I just blocked that out. I'm like,
We'll get there. We'll get there. But I do want to start off. I know that you grew up in Indiana.
Yes.
Were you born in Indiana?
I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana.
What hospital? I
have no idea.
Okay. What was it like growing up in Indiana?
That's a good question. Indiana is just, I have to think of it in comparison to being in Seattle. It's just such a different place. In terms of, obviously it's a different geographical location, but things move differently. I feel like they move slower. People move at a different pace. There's a lot more black folks in Indianapolis,
right.
Indiana. It's kind of a country urban city. All my family has moved into Indianapolis from rural areas at different points. My father's family moved there during the Great Migration to work in, rubber factories and moved there, over time to do different things. My mother's family were all farmers. They moved into the city. My aunties and my mom, and then later my grandmother. So that side of the family, both sides of the family were at one point farmers. My father's side sharecroppers, but over time, they all decided they want to be city dwellers. Yeah. And Indianapolis is kind of a city where people have, while trying to become city dwellers, have kind of stayed country. Right. So I grew up next to a cornfield, even though I lived in a city, and we lived in an apartment complex. You didn't have to walk that far to find a city cornfield. So it's also a really religious place. Seattle's not religious in the same way that Indianapolis is. So literally a church on every block. Everybody goes to church, even if you don't really consider yourself a believer. It's just kind of what people do. So yeah, it's very different than Seattle. Also, people don't talk hella academic-y, if that makes sense. You're not having these conversations with words nobody understands. People are having just very real life, pragmatic conversations about real deep stuff. But
interesting, because that's what I say. We don't talk about certain things here.
Right.
Yeah. How long were you in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I lived in Indy until I was 18, and then I moved to Seattle for college.
Okay. So how long have you been in Seattle?
I've been in Seattle since 2004.
Okay.
I moved here to go to Seattle Pacific University. Shh, don't tell anyone.
I still got questions. We gotta go
back.
We gotta go back. No. All is good. I'm glad that you said that there were hella black folks in Indiana, because there is this misconception that there aren't black folks in the Midwest, which I don't know where the hell that came from, because black folks had to go through somewhere to get north after they left the South.
Right.
And there's hella black folks in the Midwest, and way more than Seattle.
Oh, way more than King County, way more than Washington State.
Pacific Northwest.
What type of child were you in elementary school?
Sometimes I try to think about growing up, and I don't know if it's a mental block or something, but everything pre-18 is Jell-O, but I would say elementary school I was fairly easygoing, and then middle school I turned into a demon child.
What do you mean?
What happened?
Not an evil child, but just very high maintenance. I remember in 6th grade, my mom had to come up to the school because they had told her that my locker was full, even though I wasn't putting my textbooks in it. And it was full. Like, every paper from all of 6th grade was in my locker. So my mom came to school, helped me clean my locker out, and put like organizers in it. So, you know, I have the best mom ever, because she just kind of saw that and was like, that's just my child.
Right,
you know?
right.
You know, but I was also a very creative child, always into music and the arts, and dancing and singing. Like, part of like our growing up at church was I was always on the worship team, or I played in the church orchestra, or, you know, I was singing solos in church. And so, yeah, I was also a very creative
What'd
child.
you play?
I played viola from 6th grade through my first year of college.
Wow.
I taught myself to play guitar.
Nice.
I play a little piano.
Do you still play?
Sometimes.
Okay. Were you
Not publicly.
Okay. All right. Were you boxing in middle school?
I was not.
Okay.
I actually did not think of myself as an athlete until I was probably in my mid-20s.
Okay.
I just didn't feel coordinated, which is funny because my whole family, other than my mom, are athletes. My stepdad, my brothers and sisters, you know, they all play sports.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was the weirdo kid who would be like, listen to my audition song, or watch my audition dance, or hear this new song I learned on the viola. And my family was not having it.
They're like, cool, thanks, Nikita.
They no joke, they put me in the basement to practice.
Oh, that was my parents too. Close your door, please.
Nah, I wouldn't even close the door. It was go in the unfinished basement
Wow.
and practice your viola, you know. And they would come to my musicals, or like or recitals.
What did your folks do?
My mom was a pharmaceutical sales rep.
Nice. Okay.
But she went to school when in her late 20s, when I was a kid and my sister was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So for like a good chunk of my early life, my mom was working full time while trying to finish college
And raising kids.
raising
holding it
two
down.
high maintenance little girls.
Okay.
And my stepfather, who for all intents and purposes has been like the father in the house most of my life, he started a cleaning company that first started as just a carpet cleaning company. And it's actually one of the things I respect about him. It could be, you know, as we know, it could be hard being a black man in this society, and getting a job and being economically sustained. And
touching my soul.
right, he started a carpet cleaning company, and over time that grew into an industrial cleaning company. And so
Entrepreneurship.
yeah, and he's worked really hard to build that. And you know, he started as a janitor. It wasn't like one day he was like, I'm gonna clean some stuff.
Yeah.
He started out cleaning schools, cleaning carpets, and then was like, why am I doing this for someone else's company? I have all the skills and the expertise. I should just start my own company instead of doing this work for this white man's company. So
there it is.
he and my mom have worked really hard together over the years. Together they bought the first house I ever lived in. So up until 7th grade we lived in apartments. And so they worked together to buy that home. My father, my biological father, he works for a factory called the Wonder Bread Factory.
Okay.
But he hit a lot of hard times, and for a good chunk of my life was houseless. And so that really set him back a lot. So we've just started over the last few years, you know, getting to know each other better.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's hard when I live 2,007 miles away.
Are you the oldest? Yogi?
I am the oldest.
Oh, responsibility.
Yes.
It all makes sense. It's coming together now.
They love to tell stories too. As much as I was a little bit of a high maintenance teen, I was also like the very responsible one of my siblings, and I can say that because I know it's true.
Out of how many siblings?
I have. There's 5 of us.
Okay.
But not all lived in that house. 4 of us lived in that house together.
Okay.
So I was the responsible one. Like, I'm not the one my mom ever had to tell to do my homework or come home at a particular time.
Don't throw too much shade. Don't throw too much shade.
I mean, even they'll say that. They will say that.
I was going to say, they're going to be in the comments like, listen.
They know it's true. They know it's true. But, you know, I think the beauty of my siblings is we've all kind of chosen our own paths, and they all look very different. And, yeah, we all still love each other, so that's beautiful.
As you were growing up, maybe like in high school, did you know what you wanted to do with the rest of your life?
Not in high school. I did, as an elementary schooler, say that I wanted to be a singing missionary doctor. Okay. Oh. I wanted to do musicals about the Lord and then operate on people.
Where did those thoughts come from?
I mean, I grew up in the church. Yes. So, you know, I just figured I would find some way to take because my grandmother, my aunties were all nurses. Yeah. So I had it in my head. I would go into the medical profession having no idea that anatomy and physiology is just some hard ass shit. Yikes. Yeah. And so I thought I would just combine all my passions together. Why couldn't I do all three of those things at once? And then in high school, you know, I just really wasn't sure. I was awkward in high school. Like 9th grade, I was trying to wear the baggiest jeans and sweatshirt possible. I had ball chains on all around my neck. Okay. Like, I should have been in Seattle.
You were mixing things.
I thought
a little bit of grunge.
Yeah, I should have been in Seattle. That's exactly what it was. It's the mixed girl syndrome. You know, when you're mixed, you're like, you listen to a lot of different music.
I want to kick it with everybody.
Yeah, so you just start putting it together. I even was twisting my hair into like fake locks because it, you know, I could make it do that every morning, and so. Yeah, I was all kinds of confused. I had ball chains around the neck, bracelets up my arm, but the baggy clothes going with my all-white K-Swiss or sometimes the all-white Adidas shell toes. And then that was me freshman year of high school, but just super confused about everything. I was just like, why am I here at this school with these 3,500 other people every day?
Wow, that's a big school.
I don't really remember learning anything in high school. Yeah. But I was, right, like, that's sad. But I was very engaged in the performing arts, so.
Did you always know that you would go to college? Was there an option? Was it?
No. I didn't necessarily think I would go to college. In fact, my senior year, when I got called into the office to do like my little meeting with the counselor, he like really gave me 5 minutes. That's it. And was like, and I was a top 25 senior. So like of the 850 freshmen that started in my class, 450 of us graduated. I was in the top 25 of that group.
Wait. You said of the 800 people in your class, 425 graduated?
It was like 450. It was like the dropout rate and who just didn't finish was super high.
Was it also a high mobile area? Did a lot of people move around?
Not really. Okay. It just, people just didn't finish.
Wow. Okay.
So
top 25.
Top 25. Yeah. And the counselor was like, here's your 5 minutes, and then kind of moved me on. And what really got me to apply for college was, again, back to church. The people I went to church with, they were all applying to college. And I was like, wow, if all y'all are applying to college, I should probably...
I'm top 25.
I should probably be thinking about something. So I started applying. And my mom didn't go to college right after high school, and so... There was a certain amount of just us not having the knowledge as a family of how to apply for college. Like, there wasn't the Common App. You know, you had to do that stuff by hand. And so we figured it out, and I ended up getting to SPU and deciding to move to Seattle. I'd come to Seattle the summer before for, this is so nerdy, for a national Bible quiz meet. Okay. And where we competed against church teams from across the nation to see who knew 1st and 2nd Corinthians.
And they sent y'all to Seattle?
That's where Nationals was at SPU.
Wow. So that's how, is that why you applied there? Because you were familiar?
Well, why I applied was because it was far away. it wasn't in a cornfield. My mom had said I had to go to a Christian school because she was afraid I would wild out.
Okay.
I also applied to SPU because I love the rain. When we came here, it rained almost every day, and I would just take walks in the rain. And I'm moody. I already told y'all I have a Pisces moon.
With the chain in the back of your pants on.
Yeah, I'm moody.
This is my city.
I'm just moody, and I was like, this is the place for me.
Right. I don't know why I didn't put it together that you would be 18 at SPU. What was that like?
SPU was challenging. So my first week there actually was great. They have this program called Early Connections. They basically bring all the brown kids and like the missionary kids together. Missionary kids, like people who applied to the school but their families live in other countries, doing some colonial stuff, you know, proselytizing other nations. As you can see, I don't go to church anymore. But, you know, love you, Mom. But the first week was great. Early Connections. I met a lot of people who looked like me, who thought like me, who listened to music that I listened to. Some who came from the same kinds of families I came to. So they also would have other young people who were either first generation college students or maybe came from families that who didn't go on the traditional timeline for college. And so, yeah, that part was fun. We went on Ride the Ducks before it was scary than it is now. Or then. And so the real orientation starts where every student is there.
And you're like, what happened to the kids
the
of
white
color?
Flood. And not just like any kind of white. It was wealthy white. And
SPU is expensive.
Yeah.
It's
expensive. It's a private Christian evangelical liberal arts school. I had scholarships, y'all. I took out some loans. But you know, and I grew up in Indiana, and I wasn't necessarily around a lot of wealthy white folks. I was around white people, but they were like middle income white folks, or even like low income country white folks, you know. So it got really uncomfortable. And I was fortunate though that I took a class called South African Literature Post-Apartheid. And the professor was incredible. And that class really kept me engaged in what college could be about. Because we read international literature, or we read specifically from South Africa, that I had never had the opportunity to read. And my brain kind of exploded in that class, learning about apartheid, learning about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, learning about the different writing that had come out post-apartheid to tell the story of South Africa, and for Black South Africans to really reclaim their culture and identity in the land. And that really started me on a path of first thinking about reconciliation from a Christian perspective, but when I started to really dig into Christian history, because you had to take history classes and Bible classes at SPU, I started to realize how hypocritical the church was, and really started to piece together the colonialism and the role Christians had played in enslavement and in genocide on Turtle Island, on this landmass. And so SPU then also became a space where I radicalized. So as hard as it was to be in, you know, culturally, financially, because there was a point where I thought I was going to have to leave the school and go back to Indiana and go to Butler University. As hard as all those things were, it was the first place I learned how to organize and to really start thinking critically and analytically about the society that we were in. Because prior to that, you know, my experience had been very black and white. Right. Having a black parent and a white parent, and seeing how that unfolds in Indiana, because it's very overtly racist there. But then here I am studying sociology and Christian history, and really starting to realize, like, yo, this stuff might be more fucked up than I thought. Right. And started asking really hard questions. So as hard as SPU was, it was really good for my formation.
Would you say at SPU is where you started to develop your social consciousness, or did that come earlier?
I would say I was conscious at a level growing up in Indiana. It's hard to have a white family and a black family and not notice the differences in the way people are treated. Mm-hmm. So I was cognizant of racial dynamics. I was also cognizant of economic or wealth dynamics, because the church that I went to, there were people with a lot more money than what my family had, and so I could see how that played out in access and opportunity. I didn't necessarily use those words, but I had an understanding of it. So when I got to SPU and I started taking all these classes, but in particular, I went through 6 majors. My final major was sociology. Okay. And I took Soc 101, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've been looking for these words for forever. And I finally had a language to talk about things that I had been thinking about for a long time. And so I think what happened at SPU was me gaining additional words to talk about what I could see, what I was observing, what I was experiencing. Mm-hmm. And then post SPU was when I would say I really started to develop a solid analysis around change. What does change look like? What does justice look like? What does transformation look like? And how does it happen or occur? So it's been a process, but I would say even from a young age, I was aware of the differences in how people live and how people are treated.
Right. I was a sociology major too.
Whoop, same. Yeah, all the social majors.
Oh yeah, I went to Central Washington University in Ellensburg, Washington. So
I don't know how you did that.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
The years of healing after college.
Yes, but it was very similar to what you experienced as well, right? In starting taking those. Once you start taking those sociology classes and you start to get the language and learning how to organize in Ellensburg, Washington, as a black man in Ellensburg, Washington, and I was like, I'm doing this in 4. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not doing 5. I'm not doing 6. Like, this is not.
That was me. I was like, if we can make it 3.5, I'd be thrilled.
We are done. We are done here. Shout out to Central. What'd you do after school?
So I graduated during the last recession. And
likewise.
So, yeah, it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I had actually been both fortunate and very challenged that during undergraduate, I worked full time. So,
oh, wow.
At one point in time, I had like 5 jobs. I had pieced 5 jobs together. I worked for a babysitting company where I would watch rich people's kids. Okay. I'd be like on call, and I had really negative experiences. I had to go to a Cheetah Girls concert. And this girl tried to tell me, she said, go get me a shirt. I said,
wait, one of the kids that you were babysitting?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was like, we can go get you a shirt. She's like, I'm telling my mom you wouldn't do what I said. I said, oh no, child. This child don't know me.
I'm from the Midwest.
I just looked at her and I was like, I'm channeling my Baba right now. I said, do you want a shirt or not? Because if you do, we can walk over there. Okay?
Right. Demon child.
Hella high maintenance.
Right.
So, I had a period of time where I worked a lot of jobs. I had actually been houseless at one point in time in college. So I had really developed some serious survival skills.
Right.
So when I graduated, though, I had finally worked my way up to one full-time job. Had health insurance. I owned a car. I had a place I was living. I lived in an apartment on Rainier, where 2 days a week, young people were tutored by people from this church in my living room. So they paid half the rent, and then I paid the other half the rent. And the youth in the neighborhood, they obviously knew me because I was doing youth work then. And we would do, like, movie Saturdays, or I would bring food, and, like, the homies would come over and play basketball with them. So I basically did then kind of what I do now. Yeah. I worked full-time for Urban Impact, which is a Christian Community Development Association, and stayed here because there was no way to go back to Indiana and have the same kind of economic opportunity.
Right.
I had coming right out of college. You can't exchange health insurance and a full-time paid job, and a car and a really cheap apartment. Like there's just no way to make that up. So I ended up staying in Seattle. And then stayed really long.
Okay. Stayed here.
But always working with young people.
Nice. And then you went to law school.
Oh, I didn't then go to law school.
Okay.
So I graduated and I was 22,
yeah.
and I worked for Urban Impact for a while.
Yeah.
And this was around the time that my analysis really deepened around my experience with the church.
Yeah.
And ultimately, around 25, I decided I was going to step out of the church. The pastor I had been working with at the time, in my opinion, was very homophobic. And the sort of language they were using to talk about the queer community was not only off-putting, but in my opinion, really went against the message of justice that they regularly talked about within the congregation. And it was hard for me to grapple with the idea of a Jesus who didn't love everyone. So how can you tell people come as you are and then say, but not you?
Right.
And so I grappled with that for a long time. And what really kind of pushed me over the edge was a number of queer youth had started coming to the youth group and had come out. And I was watching them go through so many levels of trauma of wanting to be in this community and yet being rejected. Parts of them being rejected, which I feel like if you reject a part of a person, that kind of part of a person, you are rejecting the person. Absolutely. And so I could not in good conscience be comfortable with that. The sexism in the church really started to get to me. And so I started to dig through those things and ask myself if this was making the world healthier or if it was making the world less healthy. And was it making me healthier or was it making me less healthy? And in the end, my conclusion was that it was making me less healthier and it was making the world less healthy, because I was starting to, the kind of ways I was questioning myself were not ways that I thought the kind of loving God I had grown up being taught about would want you to question yourself. I worked for Seattle Urban Academy for a while. I worked at Year Up for a while, and I kind of bounced around between different social service jobs. And I really struggled with the type of social service we were giving people. It felt like I started to develop my critique of the nonprofit industrial complex, realizing that nonprofits in a lot of ways subsist on keeping people in poverty or keeping people from having access to justice. And so I started to develop a new philosophy around, like, if we're going to do this work, it has to always be with the most impacted people, led by the most impacted people, and it has to be with the idea of a nonprofit working itself out of existence. You want people to become sustainable. You want people to be healthy and whole. You want people to be protected and have access to justice. So eventually, your nonprofit shouldn't have to exist, which means your job's not going to exist, and you're going to have to do something different. And so I ultimately went to law school because when I was working at Seattle Urban Academy, I would go to court with young people, or I would check in on their court cases, and the youth wouldn't know what was happening, or they wouldn't be able to tell me what was happening. I'd go to court and I'd be confused about what's happening. Like, did this kid get charged with something or not? Like, what's going on? And I was complaining about it to a friend, and he looked at me. He was like, "Nikita, what the fuck are you doing?" Literally said it to me like that. He's like, "Why don't you just go to law school?" And I was like, "That's stupid." Like,
you want me to do what?
Like, people like me don't go to law school, you know, and people like me meant a lot of things to me at that time. And I didn't feel capable of going to law school, finishing and passing the bar. I didn't feel smart enough. I didn't feel like I could afford it. I didn't feel like it was a risk I could take. So when I applied to UW Law, I told them I want to come to school to learn how the law works, and then I want to use the arts to redistribute that knowledge to my community, in particular to young people. That was my focus. I had literally already told UW Law, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to practice law. I just want to learn how the law works, and then I want to be able to use my arts and creativity skills to teach young people how to know it and work against it and tear things down and build things up.
That's dope.
And they let me in on a full ride. Crazy.
Wow. Nice.
Listen, let that breathe. That's real. That's real.
It's incredible.
Who was a part of your community at this point? Like, had you solidified who your tribe was and who your folks were?
You know, my tribe has shifted over the years. In the 15 years that I've lived in Seattle, And I don't think that's because I'm not committed to people. I think that's about seasons. And in different seasons of your life, and in people's different seasons of their lives, they need different people, and you need different people. Yeah. At that time, my tribe was the Seattle arts community, in particular, like the slam poetry community. I was consistently at Seattle Poetry Slam. I was consistently at Cornerstone, which was a dope once a month hip hop show. Nice. And then I would be at Ladies First. So I was very much in the open mic scene. Yeah. And that really became my community. Those were the people I spent my time with, that I wrote with, that I performed with, that in a lot of ways I shared my life with, my trauma with, my healing with, and discovered like a new medium for vulnerability and communication, but also for transformation. And so that was a really good period of time. But then Seattle started gentrifying. Right. And venues started disappearing, and people started disappearing, and then I went to law school and I started disappearing. So it was another shift happened in my life.
Right. What was it? So you dealt with the privilege of folks at SPU. What was it like then stepping into law school and the privilege that comes with law students?
Yeah, I mean, I actually have to credit my experience at SPU for kind of preparing me for that off top. I mean, you never get used to sitting in a contracts class and after class hearing somebody say how their parents helped them buy a house and they're signing the papers right there in front of you, and they're going to live in that house and their parents are going to give them time to pay it off, and like, or listening to someone talk about how their grandmother loaned them the full amount they needed for law school. Right. And, you know, if they pay it back, they pay it back. That's just not something you ever get used to when you've never had access to that kind of wealth. Right. But it did open my eyes to how the parts of society that control how things work, how they think. What they think about folks from our communities, what stories have they been fed about that. Right. And so there was a point in time where I had to stop fighting the ignorance in law school and just listen for the purpose of just trying to understand who is it that is actually running the show and what is it going to take to move that dial. But it didn't make it like no less challenging. There's nothing like going to class on the day you're going to talk about affirmative action and just knowing like, I hella don't want to talk about this with these folks. And feeling frustrated, but knowing that if you don't say something, no one else is going to, because there's no one else in the room. Right. You might be one of two black people in the whole room, you know, or one of two people of color. It might even not be another black person. And so you make choices every day in law school as to whether or not I'm going to engage this conversation from a position of trying to engage people's minds and try to change their minds, or is today going to be the day where I just sit back in my seat and hope the professor doesn't call on me? Right. Or is this the day I skip class? Right. So, yeah, it was very challenging. It was, if it wasn't for folks like Michelle Storms,
shout out to Michelle Storm.
Right, who let me come sit in their office, close the door, and just rant. Right. If it wasn't for friends who would hit me up on a Monday night and say, yo, like, come eat with me. If it wasn't for my arts friends who would be like, are you writing? Are you creating? Are you performing? Like, you need to be doing that. But my law school experience was also shaped by the emergence of, or the resurgence of the Black Liberation Movement and Black Lives Matter. And so my first internship during law school was at the Center for Constitutional Rights in New York City. Okay. Wow. And that was the summer that George Zimmerman was acquitted for the murder of Trayvon Martin. And I remember being at CCR and luckily working with some attorneys who are just badasses and have great analysis and saying like, yo, the law don't work. Like, justice wasn't served in this case, and I can give you a whole list of cases where justice wasn't served. Like, what the fuck are we really supposed to be doing with this? Right. Yeah. And that's exactly how I said it. And, Purvi Shah, who is one of the leaders of the movement Law Lab, really like took me on that summer and worked with me to try to show me like different creative ways that I could use my legal degree. But when I came back to Seattle, there was a lot happening. And I remember the night that the non-indictment of the officer in the murder of Michael Brown came down. And remember sitting in the law school just waiting for it to all day waiting for it to come on from like noon until 8 p.m. I had my headphones plugged in or my laptop was pulled up just waiting for the press conference to start. And when it finally started, I was sitting in the law review suite. And the law review suite is where all the journals that the school produces, all the students who work on those journals are. And if you're on a journal, that's like kind of like you're the shit. I wasn't on a journal, y'all, but I'm still the shit.
You're still the shit.
But we're sitting in there and people kept walking by asking me and a friend of mine named Claire Sullivan, like, what are y'all looking at? And I remember thinking, like, how do y'all not know this is going on?
Right.
Because BLM and the way the murders of black and brown people by police became so visible through social media really shaped my experience in law school. Wow. And I remember that night we went to the protest, and I actively was thinking, like, why would I go back to school? Like, if revolution's about to happen, the last thing I want to be doing is sitting in a law school trying to learn some law that we're about to tear down.
Right.
Obviously, that didn't happen, and I did finish law school and pass the bar. But for me, it was a very challenging and painful time to be in an institution where they teach you that if you just follow the law, if you just go through the procedures, if you just do the process, then justice will be served.
Right.
And what I really learned in law school is the law and justice are not the same thing. And so graduating and taking the bar, that's the biggest thing that stuck with me.
Say more about that.
Just understanding that it's not true that if you just follow the law, bad things won't happen to you.
Right.
And it's not true that if you just go to court and you just submit the right evidence, that you'll get a just outcome. It is not true. Some people are not innocent before proven guilty. Right. They're viewed as guilty, and you have to prove your innocence. And not all cases work out fair. Like, one of the things that kills me now in the work that I do is watching prosecutors use coercive tactics to get people to confess or snitch on people. Right. So, like, if I think you might know something, I'm going to tell you I'm going to charge you at the highest level possible if you don't snitch on somebody, or I'll just give you this little misdemeanor here and you won't get no time. Right. And that to me is, if you have no evidence to implicate somebody for anything, what you're doing now is being a bully. Right. And I feel like oftentimes our justice system plays out that way. It's punitive. It plays out with more trauma. It's not restorative. Its goal is not to end harm, because in fact it inflicts the kind of harm that perpetuates harm. I mean, we live in a society that is constantly doing economic violence to poor people, constantly doing racialized violence to black and brown and native people, constantly doing sexist violence to women and queer folks. And so it's, for me, we already live in a violent police state. And what prosecution often does is prosecute crimes of poverty, or even when there is a harm that did truly occur, what our court system does is treat it punitively. It doesn't treat it with a healing lens to figure out why did that harm occur in the first place. And so it's being a lawyer kind of cuts both ways for me, because I know that it's really only a mitigation role in the current system we live in, that my job is to mitigate the worst harm that could happen until we build a system that is really about prevention and healing.
Right. So I also know that you didn't just get a law degree and pass the bar, but you also got a master's in education.
Yeah. I realized in law school that I like education more than I like practicing law. I decided to apply for a Master's of Education during my second year of law school. So I concurrently finished 2 degrees. I had to do like an extra quarter or 2 to finish. Yeah. And I had a great advisor in the College of Ed, Joy Williamson Lott, who did a lot of work looking at Black social movements.
Shout out to Joy.
Yeah, she got me through. Yeah. But she also like gave me the opportunity to start thinking deeply about the intersection of law and education. And again, the College of Education was not necessarily easier to be in than the law school, because if you think about, where do teachers learn to teach? They learn at teachers' colleges.
Yeah.
And you know, UW's College of Ed, and it's not necessarily much different than other teachers' colleges. So sometimes I would sit in classes and I would struggle. But what studying education and law at the same time allowed me to do, especially when I was writing my thesis and I could read what I wanted to and do the kind of research I was interested in, was that it allowed me to really think about things like political education, or how do you move whole groups of people in one direction. I mean, the whole school system, the general education system in the United States, was created in some people's eyes to create an educated populace where everybody could vote and everyone could participate in public service as an elected official. From other perspectives, it was made to acculturate people from other cultures and force them into the white dominant culture.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Right, you know. And so it was a useful space for me to think about how law and education can reinforce each other, both for positive or negative transformation or outcomes. And so it was a challenge, because one quarter I took like 21 credits.
I was going to say, as if law school was not enough, we decided.
Wow.
Yeah. But, you know, I took the bar, passed the bar, and then I finished my MED. And, yeah, that was that, you know.
I like how you went from, I don't know if I can go to law school. Law school's not for me, to, I'm also going to do this Master's of Education
and finish everything.
And then study for the bar and then go back of it. Man.
That's admirable.
That's more than that.
I'm one of those people, when I start to get into something and I start to realize there are other things that can be done.
Yeah.
I just want to make the most of it. So the beauty of it was, because law school was paid for, and I smashed most of my MED into the same time that I was studying, that I was in law school, I actually was able to share credits, which meant I paid a third of what a Master's of Education would cost other people.
Wow.
So some of it was also just recognizing, like,
let me take advantage.
Financially, I can actually take advantage of this. So,
Jewel, what did you do after? Like, did you go back to being an educator?
I mean, to be honest, I started working as soon as I finished taking the bar.
Okay.
I take, similar to how I am now, I would say I'm self-employed. I take contracts for legal work, for writing residencies. My biggest work is working with a project called Creative Justice, which is an arts-based alternative to incarceration. It's one way to talk about it. Nice. But really the way we think about it is we're building the system we want to see, a truly just system that acknowledges that especially young Black and brown folks and poor folks are coming from generational trauma, and they have been forced into decisions, hard spaces, based on where they live, what body they were born into, and wanting to create a system that is really about healing and undoing trauma, or at least moving through trauma is really how I should say it, and recognizing that young people need economic sustainability, they need places to tell their story, and a true measure of success for us right now is whether or not the system changes. So do they change the way that they interact with young people caught in the criminal legal system? Is a big part of that work, but we do it through the arts. We get to work with incredible teaching artists. And my first year with Creative Justice was as a mentor artist. Now I'm the case manager, so I've gotten to grow with the program. Okay. But we get to spend a lot of time with incredible young people making art, talking about health and society and economics, and making shit. It's fun.
Yeah. Entrepreneur. I love it.
You gotta be self-employed when you have the public opinions I have.
Facts.
Otherwise, people might start trying to fire you.
Listen, I told my dad that. I was like, Dad, I don't know how long y'all expect. I didn't do all this to go sit and a corporate office, a cubicle, and hold my tongue. I don't know, Dad.
I wouldn't even do it if I did sit in a cubicle.
Listen,
I'd be starting a rally
right
on the 22nd floor where I worked.
What you mean you get paid more than me? Hold on. Wait a minute.
I've been working here longer. Like this. I'm more educated. I know about this. Yeah.
Hold up. All day. I met you in 2016, right before you had gone on stage for Pachakacha, and I had never met you before. You were like super confident and just killing it. I was sweating bullets because this was like one of my first public speaking engagements, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know how this is gonna go. And luckily I got to go before you because you set the stage on fire, and I was so glad I didn't have to follow it up. But like, man, and so not only that, I want to say it was you, either you and then Jossie, or Jossie and then you. And it was just like, wow. Like I was floored. I think
everyone was
right
in that space. Yeah.
Yes.
That was a fun Pachakacha. Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure how it was gonna go down, just because we were talking about the region of boom, and I'm like I don't know if I like Seattle's boom right now. So that was a fun night.
That was fire. How did you and Jossie meet?
How did Jossie and I meet? I'm trying to think. So I worked on this song with first we did this library event with Davita Ingram.
Shout out to Davita
brings
Ingram.
Everybody together.
Yes.
And we were both on this panel together, both sitting on opposite ends, and you got two attorneys on separate ends, but we don't really know each other. We hadn't met. So prior to the event, I got up to him and been like, "Hi, I'm Nikita Oliver." He's like, "Hi, I'm Jossie Ross." I'm like, "Cool, all right, bye." I'll see you on stage later. We start to like not debate, but we start to build on each other's ideas, like in a very like kind of rapid fire way in this event, talking about land, economic justice. He's Native and Black. I'm Black and mixed with white, but I've developed very close relationships with a lot of Native peoples. And so we start building like on stage. And so at the end, he and I are standing around with Tariq, the chef.
Shout out to Tariq Abdullah.
And Tariq is like, yo, like we're on that text thread together. Like we should text our names to the thread so we all know each other, because that's also when I first met Tariq. And a few months later, I get a call from Jossie, just a voicemail. Was like, "Hey Nikita, this is Jossie Ross. I met you at the library event. I just wanted to connect with you about a couple of things." And we never connected. So then it's another month, and White Privilege 2 comes out that I'd been working on.
Yes.
With Ben Haggerty, also known as Macklemore.
Yes.
And a lot of people worked on that song, but I think Jossie has seen my name on the website, and he had kind of double intentions here. He said he wanted to talk about the song, and he did want to talk about the song, but he wanted to talk about the song because he was going to make White Privilege 3 his own version, like his own response back to
it's a very Jossie
White Privilege 2.
Yeah, that's a very Jossie thing.
But I am not one to hide what I know or what I think. And Jossie had been on stage at the Bernie Sanders rally when it had been interrupted by two young women, a part of BLM in Seattle. And I had said, "Yo, I heard you was on the stage and you didn't really have their backs." And Jossie's like, "That's not true." And he was like, "Also, you saved no time getting right into it." I said, "I just want to know who I'm sitting at the table with."
More fire.
So I think that's probably what started mine and Jossie's friendship, and also all the work that we've been able to do together was just the very candid and like
two lawyers,
almost sometimes aggressive nature of our conversation, but also like two people who deeply care about the communities we come from and want to figure out how do we build. So yeah, that's how the Nikita Jossie saga began.
Nice.
Saga.
And I ask because I know you went to Standing Rock.
I did go to Standing Rock. Actually, totally separate from my friendship with Jossie.
Okay.
It was inspired by a friend of mine named Daeshik Kim.
Okay. Shout out to Daeshik.
Hawkins Kim Jr.
Yeah.
And he's a local journalist here in Seattle. And he was in divinity school at the time at SPU, at Seattle Pacific University.
Interesting.
And I had gone to SPU to help the students do some organizing work as they were having some issues with the administration. And I feel like because the administration has used my image so much to get students of color there, that I owe those young people to show up when they're having problems, because it's like misleading. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I met Day. But Day wanted to go to Standing Rock because a bunch of pastors from different churches were going to Standing Rock to repudiate this thing called the Discovery Doctrine, which is a piece of law that basically says it was okay for white people to steal the land from natives and to participate in genocide because they were not doing anything civilized with the land, is basically what it says, if you were to break it down. And so these pastors were going to go and repudiate that because it's connected to, underlying it is, from Calvinism, something destiny.
Manifest Destiny.
Thank you, Manifest Destiny. They wanted to go, and some other friends of ours wanted to go, Aaron Kemenau, and we were all going to go, Ali Stinas, different people from SPU, and we drove there. And I was going to work with the Red Out Legal Collective, but I also had friends there who were doing organizing work and wanted to check in with them, bring them supplies. What else do you need? Right. And we got there. They do this ceremony with the elders. They repudiate the land, the Discovery Doctrine, and I remember standing there while that was happening, thinking, it's really great in word to say this piece of legal doctrine is wrong. So I want to know what you're going to do in deed. What are your actions going to look like? Are any of you pastors whose churches are on the land of native peoples, of tribes whose names you may not know or even be able to say, are you going to give them back their land?
Right.
It's one thing to say it's wrong. It's another thing to take an action that repairs it or sets it right.
They're like, whoa.
Nobody was talking about that. And that actually, it really, it disturbed me.
Absolutely.
And so I had plans to go back and spend more time there. But on our drive back, the car that Ali and Aaron were in, with another person who had been at Standing Rock named Josh, had rolled.
Wow.
And Day and I had actually stopped to sleep for the night, and in that accident our friend Aaron was killed.
Wow.
And so when I came back to Seattle, there was this weird guy named Edwin Lindo trying to do stuff in Seattle and wanting to connect. And I helped Edwin go back and be at Standing Rock for a couple of months, actually. So helped get money together for his travel, for food, for supplies, and then he stayed there for a while. But really what was powerful about Standing Rock was when I got back, some incredible organizers, Matt Rimley and Rachel Heaton, who are dope Native organizers, were starting an organization called Mazaska Talks. It means Money Talks. And it's a divestment campaign that has actually sparked divestment around the whole world. And it helped me realize that, yes, there's the front lines of Standing Rock, but there's also the front line in our city. Where is our city contributing to this crisis and this problem? And where is our city saying, not realizing you can't drink oil, you cannot eat money? How do we get them to divest? And so I started to partner and work alongside and learn a lot from Matt and Rachel. And now we're at a point where it's also understanding like divestment from fossil fuel, divestment from these banks is also about divestment from the prison industrial complex, which has been a huge part of my work. So Rachel, Matt, and I have been able to build a relationship that is really important of understanding the intersection of environmentalism and protecting Mother Earth, but also divesting from prisons and seeing the importance of solidarity between Black and Native people, which has been there the whole time. We've been in relationship the whole time. So Standing Rock was just a really important part of solidifying my commitment to always being in accountable relationship and movement with Native peoples, especially the Native organizers I'm in relationship with, but also acknowledging like I come from Black peoples, formerly enslaved Black peoples who have gone through their own generational trauma because of what the United States has done, and that relationship between us and continuing to build that. So as we fight for liberation, understanding that those two groups of sovereign peoples actually need to be fighting together, because we may suffer the oppression differently, but it's the same oppressor.
Absolutely. I think about how many institutions are invested in prison labor, right? Like from the University of Washington to like you say, like the banks and all of that. That's real. That's super real. Is that one thing that inspired you to run for mayor?
I wouldn't say that's what inspired. I mean, honestly, the run for mayor was very much based on community asking and community leading. So at the same time, the week that we came back from Standing Rock, after our friend had been killed in the car accident, 45 was elected. And there was a huge sense of political apathy. And I started sitting down with other organizers, folks like Edwin, like Jossie, like John Eckloff, and Nikki Etienne, K.L. Shannon, Roby Free. You know, I name off these folks because I want people to know who all the organizers are.
Shout out to all of these people.
Yeah, all these people
who are doing amazing work.
You know, there are so many people in our city that are a part of these movements. We started getting together, having dinner, getting coffee, and talking about how are we going to combat the sense of political apathy and the fear. How do we not get caught up in those things and then just not move, not do anything? And so we really just started talking and having conversation. And one of the grown mentors who I deeply value in my life is Gregory Davis, who runs the Rainier Beach Action Coalition. He started meeting with us and helping us think through what are the various types of strategies we can use on the local level to make significant changes here, because while we can't change in some ways what's happening at the federal level, in our local governments we actually have a lot of power.
Right. Yep.
And so we kept talking about it, and we were like, what if we ran a whole slate of people, you know, all with the same platform, all from the same party, all saying the same stuff in whatever race they're in. And we were like, that could be powerful, not knowing how much work it takes just to run one campaign yet.
Right.
And so we started making lists of people, and my name kept being on that list, but I was a secretary, so I was like, delete. My name's not on this list. I will help anyone who wants to do it, but I'm not doing it. I don't believe in the establishment. This government is a problem. We need to tear it down. But I'm here for you. Right. And so what really, the weekend that made a huge difference in my decision was the weekend of the Muslim ban. And we had gone to the airport. Almost all the folks that worked on the campaign were at the airport that night, and realized how important it is that we be ready to move at a moment's notice. Right. And then that week, I was asked by another auntie, Ayan Muse, to sit down and talk with King County Councilmember Larry Gossett what the county could be doing to be a sanctuary county, to do some analysis of our laws and whether or not we are actually protecting our immigrant families. And so in that conversation, we were very effective as a team in moving Larry to start thinking about some things. Absolutely. And as we're leaving the meeting and we're walking to our cars, Auntie Ayan says, we really need you to run for mayor. And I'm looking at her like, I'm gonna talk to you later. I gotta go.
Right.
And I get to school the next day. I'm teaching at Franklin High School, and one of the students, or actually it wasn't at the high school, it was at Creative Justice. A student in Creative Justice came up to me and said, my auntie said that you're going to run for mayor.
Damn.
And I'm looking at him like, hold up.
Who's your auntie?
Oh, I know who his auntie is. I know exactly who told him that. And
that's funny.
I had to ask him what that would mean to him, and he said he's like, I trust you. I know you. Yeah. You have our experiences. I know you're accountable. You're in our community. You look like us, and it makes me believe that someone like us could be doing that.
That's real.
So I went home. I do what everybody does who has a mama. I called my mama, and I had to talk to her about it. And my mom was like, I've always told you that I think you should be involved in politics.
Wow.
And I was like, So we go to our next meeting, and I tell everyone I'm down to run, but with some stipulations.
Yeah.
I require that we develop a party or some sort of apparatus that can hold me accountable. Yep. Because too often have we seen people get into office, instead of them changing the office changes them.
Yeah.
And secondly, I'm not doing this by myself. Because I can't quit my job. Like, I got to pay rent. I got to pay my own health insurance. I mean, jobs. Right. Multiple jobs. Right. You know what I'm saying? Self-employed. Yeah. And so everyone that was in that room agreed and committed to being a part of the campaign. Yeah. And when we won, being a part of the administration in some way or another. Absolutely. And so I knew that I had a solid community. And then when we did the launch and like hundreds of people showed up, it was like, okay, this is about to get real.
My father, actually, who watches the news every day and follows national politics, local politics, was like, you heard about this sister girl, Nikkita Oliver? And I was like, I mean, I met Nikkita Oliver. She's super dope. I was like, she's doing some dope stuff. You know, she running for mayor. Yeah, okay. Yep, I know. I think I've heard something about it. And he was like, well, I live in Kent, so I can't vote. But she's having a launch party on this date and this date. You want to go? Do you want to go? And he was like, yeah, I'll go. And I was like, okay. I was like, let's go. Let's go out there. And so me and my dad were out there, and he was like, just mind blown. He thought it was, and so was I. I brought my camera out, and I think to me internally, just to watch, like, after being there and to watch the campaign, similar to what you were saying about the student, was just like to have a candidate that looks like me, that is speaking and talking the same stuff that I'm speaking and talking, especially after what had happened with Bernie Sanders and just so many folks being like, Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. And then we got let down, and it was like, oh, why believe, right? But to see you take that and run was just like, I was thinking the same thing. Locally, like, we have more power to change things here. And so to be at that launch party with over 1,000 people packed out at Washington Hall, like, in the history that Washington Hall is, man, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had done an event with Socialist Alternatives at University of Washington. It was weird during the election. I had to have handlers, like people who would help move me around crowds, just because I legit could not get out of spaces sometimes.
Wow.
And for that day, Jossie was kind of like my handler, and we roll up to Washington Hall, and I'm looking at him like, yo, that's the line for the event? Like, the line wrapped around the block. Like, they had to bring me in a back door. And the moment when I like realized what this all meant was when Rachel Heaton was doing the blessing, because she's Duwamish, and she was giving her blessing, and our native relatives who had come to drum and sing were singing, and then Roxanne White invited me to sing the Warrior Woman song with them, and we're in front of all these folks, and people are continuing to pour into the building. Just realizing that this was about something so much bigger than an election, and that it actually was about the thing we had started with, was how do we keep people from giving in to political apathy and actually giving in to their imagination and inspiration about what else could we be doing. Yeah, this part sucks and it's awful, but where is our power? Right. And how can we empower ourselves and each other to really live in that power? So, yeah, that day was really great. And then it was 5 months of, like, running nonstop.
Man, I remember having dinner with you. And you just looked so tired because you were the only candidate that was still holding down a full-time job. Getting out, going to talks, barely eating, like, oh my gosh.
What's crazy is I still ran every day, though. Yeah. I got to the boxing gym, I would run. It was like bar prep all over again, only with much higher stakes.
Right. With people following you and asking you questions and to take pictures every day.
Yeah, it was
following you around the grocery store.
My name all over the city.
Right.
I'm like, there's my name, there's my name, there's my name.
There's my name. That her? Is that? Hold on, let me. Yeah, that's her.
Is that my face on a sticker? Is that my face on a wall? You know, but what was most great about the election was our team.
Yeah.
We had a solid team. People worked their asses off nonstop. And, like, some people unpaid worked their asses off.
Absolutely.
You know, so, and there were people who'd be like, yo, Nikita's not getting paid, and we asked her to do this. Like, if she's having to run like this and she's not getting paid, like, we gotta run hard. So people were running hard, and it was just one of those moments where it was very clear how much we can do even when we have less, because we had no money at first,
right? And
then by the end raised $130,000. Yes. Knocked on 22,000 doors, had 1,100 volunteers. I gotta shout out Jackie Mena because she worked her ass off nonstop, her and her sister Deanna, and so it really showed what people power can do.
Hell yeah.
And then when we got to the primary election, and we only lost in terms of the election by 1,100 votes, for us, it was a win.
Yeah.
Because when we first started planning to run, we were like, yo, you're a nobody. Don't nobody know you. And really, like, what we need to be doing is, like, how do we move this platform forward? Absolutely. How do we grow community voice? So we had set for us what our metric of success was. What did a win look like for us? And so when we got as far as we did, got as many votes as we did, with way less access, and doing it on our terms as organizers, I never compromised a single word out of my mouth.
Right.
And we still got 16.9%. And 20 other candidates had to run to even try to stop that. And since then, I've learned a lot. Like, there were Democrats that didn't want us to be successful, so they put other Dems in the race to try to split the vote.
There were hella people in that race. It was like, wait, you're running, you won't even get what? So you just entered? That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was crazy, but I also firmly still stand with, like, we won.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, the People's Party is present in things. Yeah. People want to be a part of it. We're filing for our 501c4.
There it is.
We're going to be building a membership. We're going to run more candidates. We're going to run initiatives. We're going to do political education. We're going to feed people. You know, like, it's not just about running for office. It is about changing the material conditions of the most marginalized and disenfranchised in our city.
Yeah. And it was dope to see you during that time. Like you say, you didn't hold your tongue. You were still, like, going back and forth with trolls on Facebook who were like, no, you need to pander more to the white vote, and that's why blah, blah, blah. And it was like, no, I'm not going to do that, and here's why, and here's an essay of why I'm not going to do that, and why you shouldn't have asked me to do that in the first place. And, like, very eloquently, like, going back and forth toe-to-toe. And then I see you in spaces and moving around. And so it was like, damn.
And you had publicity and shine on these blogs and news outlets that were nationwide, not just local. And I thought, this is huge. People are paying attention to this outside of Seattle. This is huge.
And so that, I mean, listen, I'm inspired. I'm inspired, and so are obviously like thousands of other people who voted for you and who were just watching, who couldn't vote, like my father who's in Kent, or like the folks out of state. Like, and I'm so happy to hear that so much is still building on top of it.
It didn't just stop.
And you're still going toe to toe with Facebook trolls every day.
I've lessened that a little bit. I do. You know, even during the election, I was very choosy about who I responded to. Mm-hmm. Like, unless it wasn't a legitimate question that was worth responding to, I'm not responding. I don't have time. Makes sense. I don't have time. But, you know, I really hope people are mostly inspired by what communities can do for themselves.
Absolutely.
And really thinking about what does people power look like, and what does investing in one another look like.
Absolutely.
What does it look like to have electeds that speak unapologetically about their values? Mm-hmm. And I feel like, while maybe we didn't win the election, what we did show people is you can have a candidate who you know exactly what they're going to do. Their values are clear.
And even the fact that, one, every room that you walked into, whether it was an audience that was there for you or an audience that was there for multiple folks, it was this diverse range of people who were all sitting in this room, like, and the way that you were able to shift the mayoral conversation from the things that were politics as usual for a lot of folks to, what about this multi-million-dollar youth prison that we're doing? Like, so, so y'all need to answer that. What's up?
And that was the goal. It was like, how do we take the issues, the communities that we represent? Because honestly, like, the table of folks that were working on the campaign came from so many different communities. The disability community, Black community, African communities, various Asian and Pacific Islander communities, you know, different income levels, different organizing experience, the Latinx community. Like, there were all kinds of people at the table. And so our goal was, how do we elevate? How do we get people to know about our community's needs? But also, how do we elevate our artists? Like, art and culture was always a huge part of every event. But I have to say, that first debate that we did when Murray was still in the race and Moon had just jumped in and McGinn had just jumped in, I remember the microphone was a handheld mic and you were supposed to stand up and answer the questions. And I was very lucky to have both Edwin and Jossie on our team, because sometimes we would just sit around and we would do the lawyer thing and talk about, like, after we would do a listening post, talk about different things we heard as policy strategies, and we would basically debate each other. And so I remember getting on that mic thinking, I spend all the time on a microphone.
That's what I do.
I stand in front of people and teach things all the time, and then I sit here with just the homies and we debate critical things all the time. Like, this is not hard for me. And I watch the other candidates be nervous and kind of stumble over themselves, and then I was like, at a moment where I really grounded in, and I was like, yo, this stuff, I'm built for this, you know, and really realizing, like, I rocked my tennis shoes to everything. And so there was also something really special, like, hip-hop heads that I've grown up with respecting would be like, yo, Nikita, I'm voting for you, you know what I'm saying? Or like, I respect you. Being like, yo, on the flip side of that, you could be a hip-hop candidate, you could be a candidate that really represents the interests of the most marginalized, like, just really getting to bring the fullness of our cultures to the table without compromising. Felt really good. Despite the fact that, to be honest, running for office sucks. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard.
It's
a job.
It is a job.
And the media, mainstream media.
Oh my gosh.
It was hard to get them to acknowledge all my credentials. At first, they were just like, Nikita Oliver, Black Lives Matter activist. And it'd be like, but, like, you're over here calling Carrie Moon an urban planner, and Jenny Durkin a lawyer, and McGinn a lawyer and environmental activist, you know what I'm saying? And
I was so mad.
But, you know, we our team was creative, and we were like, you know what, we just need to come up with a strategy that calls the media out. Why can't this campaign also be about media justice? Right. Like, it could be about everything we need it to be about.
And especially like with which is the reason why we do what we do. And even for me as an entrepreneur, and the push for me to start my business was like somewhat inspired by watching your campaign and watching the way that media tells stories around like non-white folks in this city, and watching the level of quality that happens to how our stories are honored, right? The fact that it wasn't lawyer Nikkita Oliver or educator Nikkita Oliver or like person who's been in this city for over a decade Nikkita Oliver was like, yo, you are taking away a part of her story,
right? And
so that's real. What advice would you give folks who the younger folks who are graduating from college now, who are like, we are in this, I don't even know how to describe the political landscape of what's happening here locally and here nationally, but what advice would you give the folks who are graduating, who are like, I have to do something about this, and this might be a calling for me?
You know, I would say if you want to run for office, do it on your own terms. I think that's the only honest way to do it. Politics is an incredibly dishonest business. And part of the reason I really struggle when people ask me, will you run again, is I've watched our elected officials repeatedly negotiate the value of other people's lives and their living situations, not realizing that that's a situation they'll never have to live in.
Right.
And not do the right thing because it's not politically advantageous or because some big business, Amazon, is pushing them in a different direction.
Right.
And so do it on your own terms, do it accountably, do it in community. And you don't have to do it traditionally. You don't have to be a career politician to be an elected official. In fact, we need less career politicians and more everyday people in office. And don't think that the political realm is the only way you can make change. There's organizing, there's education, there's just being with people and figuring out how do you meet people's everyday needs. A huge part of what I'm thinking about these days is how do you change the material conditions of how people are living? How do you create economic sustainability, land, educational, employment opportunities? And you can do that from various positions. At the end of the day, it really should be about serving people.
Absolutely.
And that's what elected officials are oftentimes missing. They're serving everything. That's what
Right.
they're supposed to do.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, and they would say, I am serving people. And then it's like, well, you're serving big business people.
Right.
Well, ultimately, their business strategies don't serve people. So if you were to follow it down the line, you're not serving people. You know, so be thoughtful about it. Do it in community. Do it accountably. Know your values and your principles. Know what lines you're not going to cross.
I like what you said, because it also goes back to what you were saying about being inspired by Huey and the Panthers, and that you don't have to run for elected position. The Panthers were given free breakfast,
right,
and making sure that kids ate before school started.
They were giving people boots. They were driving folks to see, incarcerated loved ones.
Community policing, all of that.
They were doing pest control.
Right, right.
Erica Huggins told me that the value of the Panthers was what the people told you they need is the thing that you give them.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, what are some of the issues that you feel like our communities aren't hearing about that they should be hearing about? I know you're working on the Stopping the Youth Jail, and just educating through art. But what are other things?
Wow, that's a big question.
I know.
I mean, in terms of what I'm working on, for me, it's actually bigger than Stopping the Youth Jail. It is about developing a system that is truly restorative, and does acknowledge trauma and is about trying to find healing. I think people should be really looking at our housing crisis, thinking about and finding ways to support our houseless folks and having access to housing. as the Supreme Court is drastically changing, continuing to think about the rights of women and the rights of queer folks and gender nonconforming folks, because in terms of society we live in, and how can you be a part of protecting that? Obviously, ICE has got to go, and thinking about our immigrant relatives and families. Police accountability in Seattle is not a success yet. In fact, there's a police chief to be selected soon, and in my opinion, none of the 3 finalists are anyone I want, and that's not because I dislike Carmen Best. I actually think Carmen Best is a really nice human being. However, I'm looking for somebody who's going to talk boldly about the roots of policing, the racialized history of it, how those outcomes continue to happen. I'm tired of hearing we're going to give more tools and we'll put new policies in place and we'll fire racist cops. We've heard this before, and yet it does not amount to real safety for the communities most brutalized by the police. So paying attention to that. And I also hope that folks in our region will start thinking more regionally about what solutions can we develop, because problems that are happening in Seattle are also happening in other cities. And in fact, the way Seattle decides to deal with things has a huge impact on our whole region. And so we really need to start taking a regional approach to how we address social issues and how we care for each other. I'm always thinking about young people.
Absolutely.
Keep your eyes on our young people. Spend time with our young people. Listen to our young people. Would be just some of the few. I mean, there's so much to think about. There's so much to have on our minds, and I would encourage people, find an area that you can be committed to, and commit to it, and be a part of making change in that area. Use your power, your influence, your gifts, your tools. Be a learner, be accountable, because you're not going to get it right every time. And we all have internalized things to undo, and we all have different intersections of privilege and oppression, and we don't get it right all the time. So continue that self-education, but don't give in to the apathy. Do something. You can't do everything, but do something.
And I know you're all over the place all the time. Is there anything that you would like to, anywhere that you would like to let people know that you'll be at?
Not necessarily that I'll be at, but there is the Othello Block Party on July 28th, but this might come out.
No, it don't. Let me figure it out.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, though.
Yes.
If you liked what you heard, be sure to donate so we can keep going. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube, so be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment. You have no idea how much it helps. We also want to know what you think. You can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can even use the hashtag #NoBlueprint. And if you're really down with the movement, you can join our Patreon account and become a patron, where you'll get exclusive content and limited edition merchandise. No Blueprint is powered by Ambassador Stories. We share stories of the people, places, and spaces that bring soul to our communities. No Blueprint is recorded at Ambassador Stories Studios and co-produced with me, Maya Aina. Hear more episodes of No Blueprint and get official No Blueprint merchandise at noblueprintpodcast.com.